All right, everyone. Biden is basically off the campaign trail, but he is still at least talking to reporters, as long as it's fluff pieces by reporters that are specifically very, very much in his camp. He refuses to talk to anyone off the cuff anymore. He never takes questions from reporters in the decreasing number of times that he actually goes out and campaigns in person. Most often he just sits there probably in his slippers in his living room and does Zoom calls, which is like the most lame campaign we've ever seen. The fact that Trump is not completely curb stomping him in every state at this point tells you something about the strength of legacy media propaganda, having convinced them that Trump is Adolf Hitler. It's beginning to wear off. They're becoming nervous, the Democrats are. But a confused Joe Biden the other day indicated he joined the Senate 180 years ago, during the antebellum period, so he's definitely old. People were joking, oh, Biden is confirmed to be a vampire. He couldn't remember what he was talking about at multiple times during this spiel. Look at it for yourself. Link in the description if you want to see this particular clip, but you can watch the full interview. Biden is out to lunch. He's got a teleprompter in front of him. He has an earpiece. He has notes. He's in the most comfortable, personal environment he can possibly be in, with everyone around him off camera, I'm sure, for moral support. He's literally surrounded by nothing but allies, getting nothing but fluff softball questions, in his own home with a teleprompter, and he still has difficulty staying on track. He still has difficulty saying the things that he needs to say and not making major errors. 180 years ago, he was in the Senate. I find that a little bit hard to believe. I realize that the dude's elderly, but, comes a cutoff point at which human life tends to terminate. And by the way, it's not even immediately clear that he realized he made a mistake. He did the dementia chuckle afterwards. Did you catch that? Again, link in the description. Look for yourself. It's the dementia chuckle. There are hallmarks of Alzheimer's that unfortunately I'm familiar with. And it's a real thing. It's I don't think part of the diagnostic criteria, but it's a behavioral sort of asset of dementia that people can attest to. And some of you, unfortunately, have had to see family members with dementia and stuff, and you probably know that too. Sometimes the person, in their confused state, all of a sudden they'll make a grimace. It's sort of like a fear grimace, like the soy face a little bit, except it's usually a closed mouth. That little chuckle when one has made a major mistake, as though to sort of cast it off as though it's meaningless, like reassuring yourself that, oh, well, I forgot, I made a funny. Those are things that can happen with Alzheimer's disease, especially in the earlier stages. I hate to tell people this, but a person with Alzheimer's disease is potentially only a few weeks out from becoming the man with the nuclear codes. I'm not comfortable with that. Neither should any reasonable, sane American. Trump's still with it. He's always spoken off the cuff and said weird shit. I can look back to interviews of him when he was still in his 50s or 60s, long before the general threshold for Alzheimer's, and he basically acts the same fucking way. Joe Biden did not act like this even 3 years ago. There's speeches that he made from 3-4 years ago. He's totally cognizant. He's completely with it. It's not the same man that we see today. And the idea that it has to do with a stutter. Stutters don't evolve over time and become worse and worse visibly on the campaign trail and cause you to say that you were in the Senate 180 years ago. I don't even know what reference he was making. Then he starts talking about someone named John, and people think he might have been starting to talk about corn pop at one point. At one point, he forgot completely what he was even answering, had to be have the question refreshed in his mind. The dude is incapable of holding a basic short conversation with someone who is being as non-confrontational and coddling as possible. What's going to happen when he's up on stage getting zinged by Trump for 2 hours? I guarantee that Chris Wallace is going to be doing everything in his power to shield Biden. Biden will receive softballs. Trump will be mainly fighting off the moderator the entire debate. If you think that you're going to see fireworks between Trump and Biden, no, you're going to see them between Trump and Chris Wallace. Because I guarantee that the fix is in. Now, probably Biden will say demented shit, and they'll say, well, sorry, Mr. Vice President, we have to cut to a commercial now. As he sits there and recomposes himself and adjusts his earpiece a couple clicks louder so he can hear what his staff are yelling at him to say. That's Biden. He's out to lunch. And by the way, he's basically an absentee. BitChute exclusive of the day, which will be uploaded in a short period of time after you see this, is going to be on just that. Biden's an absentee. He's taking 6 days a week off the campaign trail. He's more lazy than Hillary. What happened? Hillary didn't go to Wisconsin. What happened in Wisconsin? Trump's people are knocking on doors. Trump is making impromptu appearances to thousands and sometimes tens of thousands of people, still in blatant violation of, by the way, the coronavirus bullshit. At least they're all wearing masks. Biden's not doing anything. Jill Biden the other day had a meeting. It was like with 10 people, and I think Fairbanks was chuckling about how it was a sold-out event. It was at capacity. Basically, it's actually, for Biden, it's really great that there's a pandemic, because it gives him an excuse to keep the crowd small, and it doesn't look like he's simply incapable of drawing large crowds. If this were a normal campaign, do you think that Biden would be able to get more than 1,000 people into a stadium? I don't think so. There is no enthusiasm. I'm hearing from people all across the U.S., and of course, I come from Vermont. Even if I was physically in the U.S., it's not really an indicator of the political climate. Vermont is a deeply blue state. Rutland happens to be a swing district, but Vermonters are a little more, they keep it close to their chest. It's not like you go to Texas and there's like flags and signs everywhere. It's not like that in Vermont. It's a little bit more scant, generally speaking. More often you'll see it at a business than a private home, like a lawn sign and stuff. I'm hearing systemically across virtually the entire country that there are fewer Biden signs than there were Hillary signs, number one, and that output for Trump, that Trump hats and signs and stuff are more prevalent than they were. This would comport to the in-party enthusiasm idea. I am very concerned about ballot harvesting and rigging in this election, as opposed to the last general, which was largely fair, by the way. People still say, well, Hillary she tried to cheat and just failed. No, they weren't trying to cheat in the general. They weren't set up to cheat. They had the last 4 years to retool things, to try to rig a general election. In the past, they just rigged the primaries. As long as they can rig the primaries with their big money donors, it doesn't matter who wins the general election. But if you've got an independent candidate in the general, you have to try to rig things against him. That's exactly what they're trying to do to Trump. Don't fucking kid yourself. That's what they're doing. And Joe Biden is literally demented. The man is falling apart before our very eyes. There are people who are so blinded by their partisan crap rhetoric that they don't even notice. And if they do, in a roundabout way, notice, they immediately devolve into whataboutism and say, well, Trump does it too. No, he doesn't. Trump has never stated he entered the Senate 180 years ago or anything close to it. Trump always rants. He is always slightly incoherent. That's his speaking manner. He's been like that since he was far too young to be demented or have cognitive decline. Biden was never like that until recently. The man has cognitive decline. He has dementia. He is a sick individual in the mental sense. He's falling apart. If he is elected, a demented person for probably the third time in U.S. history will be the one running the show. Of course, second term Reagan, you can make an argument. You had Wilson there. He had a stroke and was basically completely out to lunch. Not dementia, but incapacitated. And his wife had to run things for the last year of his presidency. And that's basically it. That's what you've got. Hell, Trump's old enough, some point in his second term, he could go Ronald Reagan mode and start saying, like, smearing poo or something. That's a possibility. The man's in his mid-70s. He'll be Biden's age when he leaves his second term. But Joe Biden's already there. It's crazy talk to think about electing him. Weren't we just talking about how Trump and Hillary Clinton were both kind of too old for the job just in 2016? Now you've got a nominee that's pushing 80 years old. Literally showing the signs of dementia. I hope on a debate stage, I hope that America's eyes are open, and at least the independent voters will see. And through the wall of propaganda, and Chris Wallace's softballs and complete defense of Biden, I hope he has a moment that is undeniable cognitive decline. I hope Biden wanders off on stage, sort of confused, not knowing what he's doing. I hope that something like that happens to save our republic from even the possibility that we end up suffering with him, number one, running the show in a de facto sense, and number two, a slimy, sleazy cabal of evildoers, which is what they are, war hawks, all the Bush people, all of Obama's, the best economics of the Obama era and the best foreign policy chops of Richard Nixon and George W. Bush are assembled behind Joe Biden. I don't want them in the government anymore. Their time has passed. Shove them out. Shoo them aside so we can have some real progress for change. That's about all. Peace out.